I can't keep this to myself. I have to share this. You know, I don't like having been circumcised. Treating the head of my penis with iodine solution increases its sensitivity and makes it more difficult to wear clothes than to be a nudist. And lest you think that nudity is so unspiritual because India doesn't practice it, think again. You don't know your history. A lot of people are not students of history and they don't learn anything. They think they know something and they don't know anything. If you look at the history of India, they were invaded by the Ottoman Empire from Turkey, who were trying to spread Islam throughout the world. And that's why there are a lot of people practicing Islam in India today, because 400 years ago, the Ottoman Empire, which was also trying to just plain be imperialists like we do today, and spread their imperialism around and their flavor, their brand of imperialism throughout the world. And so the monks of India, who up until that time traditionally gave up all their possessions, including their clothing, were nudists, but they lived in the forest and in the caves, away from the city, and maybe in small towns they served a perfunctory function as the priests for the common people, and they were accustomed to this. They were accustomed to the priests or the monks being naked, being nudists, up until 400 years ago. Now, Islam is no different than Judaism in that they practice circumcision. And also, in that regard, they are no different for their being prudes. They can't stand the sight of the naked penis, so they wear lots of clothing and they cover up. Well, that doesn't mean that the Hindus, who are the dominant population in India, have to practice circumcision necessarily, and they don't predominantly. That's their way of life, is to not circumcise. But because of the influence of the Ottoman Empire intruding into India, it impacted clothing, notions of clothing, and with regard to the monks who were nudists. So that's when it became the custom for Dandi Swamis to wear orange robes, and for non-Dandi Swamis, who were just monks, not part of the order, in other words, freelance monks, to wear white robes, such as Maharishi wears white, yet his master wore orange, saffron. And the wearing of robes is something recent. And when Maharishi's master, Gurudev, was in the forest, he didn't wear a robe, he just wore a loincloth, but he still wore something. And that's something I don't understand, having been a nudist since the age of 14, and having been circumcised, and treating my penis with iodine, dilute iodine. My penis is even more sensitive than ever before, and wearing anything is uncomfortable. I wear something out of necessity when I leave the house, but I don't particularly like wearing clothes when I'm in the house. Certainly nothing below the waist. Yet that's the way people are. They are circumcised for the most part, and they come out of either the tradition of Judaism or the tradition of Islam, both of which believe in circumcision, and the effect of that is the wearing of clothes. Shame, and disgust, repulsion to the body, instead of the way we normally should think about the body in a healthy regard, that we should not be repulsed or incensed over somebody's naked body. So I don't particularly like wearing clothes. It's uncomfortable, and I regret putting on clothes to fit in. But I can't help thinking that India is certainly not an example, a shining example. Maharishi didn't like it that India was invaded by the British. Well, India was invaded by the Ottoman Empire 400 years ago, or 500 years, I can't exactly remember when, but it was several centuries ago, with their influence that came upon India. So India is not India. It's just like we're not human, we're not natural. We don't know what natural means. We have a ways to go before we become natural, and I'm going to be dead long since before we're ever natural. So I'm outside of my time frame. I'm born out of my elements. So maybe Mother should never have gone back to eating cooked food. Maybe she should have stayed a raw food vegan alcoholic, and I never would have been born to her. I never would have been born, period. Because I think the only reason for my being born was to be with Charlie. And yet I don't fit in. Charlie failed to integrate me into society. I don't fit in. I don't want to fit in. I don't want to be unnatural. It's, naturalness, there's spiritual naturalness, and then there's physical naturalness, and the only natural I am is physical, the material. I'm not natural in the spiritual at all. I deny myself. I don't want to even face myself. I'm terrified of the thought, because I know what's going to happen. I'm going to be very depressed, but to face all my karma. So I just face the physical. But still, yet, one half of life is the physical. And the only reason why we seek enlightenment is because we sought to come out into the field of the relative and be not enlightened, and make believe that we are ignorant, and make believe to such a degree that we convince ourselves that we're not enlightened, such that we have to struggle with our ignorance to grow out of it. An endless cycle of going back and forth between the absolute and the relative, in which the absolute dominates our life versus the relative now dominates our lives. But going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, seemingly endlessly, I guess. That's from all accounts. There was a story that Maharishi told. They were out on the lake, a moonlight, voyage or recreational activity to spend some time out on the lake, and he had a few devotees around him, and he said, in the last time we did this, the only thing different was you were sitting over there and you were sitting over there, and the seating arrangement on the boat was different, but otherwise they were doing the same thing they did eons and eons ago, but in the same relationship. He was the master and they were the devotees. So he was alluding to the fact that this process we go through it endlessly, endless cycles of coming into the world and leaving the world. And Charlie, I never remember him giving that lecture. Maybe I wasn't there. I wasn't there all the time, so maybe he gave that lecture when I wasn't there, but I never remember him stating that. But apparently, according to the rumor mill in the TM movement, Maharishi did make that statement. And I think it was only that one time. And it's enough cause to wonder, which is better? See why I hold on to the relative so much? It's because, well, no, because I think it's permanent, and I guess it is from my standpoint, but eventually it won't be. So it makes you kind of wonder, so it's no small wonder that I'm in no great hurry. Since I've already had my taste of enlightenment as a teenager, it's like, what's the rush? But I can't enjoy life anyway, because I have no foreskin, and I'm sickly and weak, and I have a higher IQ than most people, and so I never fit in. I'm never happy with anything. I'm always dissatisfied. What can I say? Well, sickly if I didn't take the extra trouble to do extra protocols to try and stay healthy. Anyway, I had to get this off my chest. So India is not India. And just as Maharishi has said that we don't live up to our constitution, and it's true, we don't. Well, likewise, the Indian population in India do not live up to their traditions either, because their monks wear robes. And traditionally, if you go back before the Ottoman Empire overran India, they didn't wear robes. They were naked. All the monks were naked, so whatever. For my TMer friends who like to think very highly of their westernization of wearing clothing, it's not natural. It's not normal for monks to wear clothing, to wear white or to wear anything, saffron, anything, beige colored suits. I mean, it's a westernization of a circumcised way of life. It's the side effect of circumcision. It all comes back to circumcision. So it all comes back to the penis, whether you avoid dwelling on the topic or not. It all comes back to how we deal with our anus and our penis, really, the two of them, because they're right next door to each other. How we deal with our anus and our penis, or genitals, in the case if you don't have a penis. Your clitoris, it's the same thing. It all amounts to how we deal with them. And hygiene, I always feel hygiene is the only religion, and there is no other. Now, yoga is not religion. It's the root of religion, but it's not religion. And one limb of yoga has to do with how we take care of the body, hatha yoga. So it is in there, the treatment of hygiene. Hygiene is in the practice of yoga, but it's just one aspect of yoga. It's not, the most rarefied. It just has to do with taking care of the body and being healthy. So in a sense, I'm focusing on just one aspect of yoga, and it's not even the most elevated aspect, but it's an aspect that has concerned me the most because I was born with a sickly body, and it's my karma. I spent too much time fasting in my past lifetime to be born with a healthy body in this lifetime. So I was born with a weak body. And now I take a lot of trouble to be healthy, so hopefully maybe in my next lifetime I won't have to worry about my health so much. It'll be automatic, who knows. Some people were fortunate in being born with a healthy physiology in this lifetime, so they don't have to worry. They just eat and meditate, and they don't worry about their body. But it's always been a concern all my life. I've been sickly and I hated it. I hated being sickly. So you can see my motivation, why it's come first before everything else. But it disturbs me that people think that, clothing is natural. No, it's not natural, because circumcision is not natural. So we avoid the topic of circumcision, which is the real topic under scrutiny when it comes to wearing clothes and being decent and having a reputation of fitting in. The real problem is circumcision, and we never talk about it. And the real problem behind circumcision is whether or not we clean out the colon and sterilize it. So you can see why I have a concern for giving myself my own version of basti instead of using sesame seed oil. Is to use Lugol's, dilute Lugol's. It's my way of doing things, because purification is not enough. Oil? Are you kidding? Why would I want to shoot up my colon with oil? It's a nice thought to make it the poop slippery to come out, but I don't think so. The colon doesn't absorb oil. Well, that's the whole point of doing it. And that's the style of thinking of a lot of people, even in the West, is to do things contrary to the nature of the thing in question. So we take off this foreskin when it's supposed to be there and then put on clothes in its place. Or we put oil up the colon that can't even absorb oil when we should be putting water-based solutions up our colon, not oil. It's ridiculous what we do things, but we do the opposite of what we're supposed to. And Charlie did say that. More often than not, we get things backwards. And that's why we're not natural. So I have focused on the body to be natural, and so I'm not unnatural when it comes to the body. But I've done so to the exclusion of everything else. And I can't stand not having a foreskin, so what can I say? And the treatment of the penis to try to develop a foreskin, all it does is make it more sensitive and make it more painful to wear clothing to surround the penis. I have to go back to wearing gauze dressing, moistened in probably a Lugol solution, around the penis if I wanted to not be uncomfortable wearing clothing. I don't know how I'd wear it. I guess the only way to do it is to wrap a rubber band around both the balls and the penis, so as not to compress the penis, and hope that I don't... Well, see, I didn't know how to prevent an erection, and a Lugol's might just be the ticket. That might be the correct solution to use around the penis. Not silver, not salt, as Dr. Becker had promoted, but Lugol's of all things. Because I think iodine corrects the problem of why we have had to use procreation as the only means of bringing humans into the world. Because there was a time when, yogis were able to bring new life, new human beings into the world without the need for sex. They simply manifested a body. And it was their son, and it was their devotee for life. They had their own devotee to carry on the tradition of the father in a very natural way, because he gave birth to his own son through his consciousness, not through the use of the body, certainly not through the use of the genitals. But they had a high state of purification. They practiced a lot of different practices that we don't even think of to keep things on a very high level. So I'm not doing anything out of the tradition of yoga. It's just a tradition that the Westerner doesn't want to even consider. Yet if we do consider it, then we have no need to circumcise and no need to worry about wearing clothing, because there's no need to have a false facade, because you already are an adept in taking care of the physical plane of the body, such there's no need to cover it up and fake being upstanding when in reality you already are.